Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we have a really a unique mission ahead of us. We're not just following one narrative thread.
No, not
We're tracking two intense, simultaneous chronicles.
Yeah.
One is deeply interior, focused on emotional recovery, family pathology.
The other is, well, it's the complete opposite. It's fiercely external. We're talking geopolitical terror, espionage.
Exactly. And our sources for this give us this incredible, almost forensic blueprint of how these two worlds, the deeply private and the globally clandestine, are just unexpectedly crashing together.
That's right. And the material we're working with, it really forces you to treat a character's private anxieties. I mean, the fear in a dream, this compulsion to clean with the exact same analytical scrutiny as you would a high-stakes military operation.
Yeah.
We're digging into the motivations, the specific power dynamics, and the deep emotional undercurrents that are running just beneath all this surface chaos. And it all centers around the hunt for this lethal piece of media.
Right. And the sources outline this personal journey of a woman named Joelle deep inside a substance difficulty rehabilitation facility. And her story is running parallel to these ruthless operations of the AFR. And just to remind everyone, that's Les Assassins des Fauteuils Roulants.
The wheelchair assassins, a militant group of Quebecois separatists.
And the point where these two stories converge is it's critical and it's absolutely explosive. So we're going beyond just what happened. We want to explore why it mattered.
We're treating a person's internal life and, global espionage as equally potent, equally destructive forces.
Especially within the political structure of ONAN, the Organization of North American Nations.
Okay, so let's unpack this. I think we have to start where the emotional stakes are just off the charts, deep inside Joelle's struggle.
We find Joelle at a truly fragile point. I mean, for years, her whole identity was defined by this extended state of not caring.
Which is its own kind of armor, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
But the moment she commits to sobriety, that lack of care, it doesn't just vanish. It immediately inverts.
Yeah.
It flips and transforms into what the source calls an obsessive worry.
Right. It's like the mind snapping back into the driver's seat after years of, outsourcing all responsibility to the addiction. But the underlying emotional discipline, that's still really weak. So the anxiety, it has to latch onto something tangible, something you can physically control.
And that's a classic defensive reaction.
It is. It's a reaction to the immense vulnerability that sobriety just throws you into. And for Joelle, that vulnerability, that physical proof of her past chaos, it centers entirely on one thing.
Her teeth.
Her teeth.
And the sources make this link horrifyingly specific.
Yeah.
Her addiction, it was to base cocaine. And the text notes explicitly that this drug, it eats teeth, corrodes teeth, attacks the enamel directly.
Yeah, so this isn't a metaphor for decay.
No.
It's literal physical destruction, a chemical assault happening inside her own body.
And this fear, it's not just in her head. It's being constantly amplified by her environment in the recovery house.
Oh, absolutely. She doesn't just worry about some, theoretical damage. She sees the living, breathing evidence of it every single day.
The text mentions the blackened and disintegrating teeth of other residents, like Wade McDade.
Right. And even more specifically, another resident, Chandler Foss, he actually explained the corrosive base effects to her while showing her the remnants of his own teeth.
Wow.
So the physical visibility of that decay, that's what gives her what the source calls the phantods.
Okay, phantods. That's an interesting word. For you listening, what exactly are the phantods in this context?
It's an old-fashioned term, but it's so evocative. It means these profound, almost uncontrollable jitters, a fit of extreme visceral anxiety.
So it's not a rational fear.
No, it's a terror that starts not in your logic or your emotions, but deep in your gut. Joelle's fear of her rotting teeth is so raw, so physical, that the emotional or, the spiritual work of meetings, it just can't touch it.
It's a physical panic.
A physical panic that demands a physical solution.
And the desperation, you see it in her actions. She is now obsessed with fortification.
Yeah.
She's carrying a traveler's brush everywhere. She's using these expensive, alleged enamel revitalizers.
Yes. And this is her desperate and, you noted, highly expensive attempt to fight the physical evidence of her past. If the addiction was chaos and neglect, the defense mechanism is obsessive, sterile control.
She's trying to literally scrub away the evidence of her trauma.
She is. It's an unsustainable, high-level counterattack against the decay that her previous life inflicted. And this action, it just perfectly highlights the essential tension of early sobriety.
Which is?
The spiritual repair requires you to acknowledge the damage, but the overwhelming physical evidence of that damage often drives the addict toward controlling the external symptoms instead of facing the internal causes.
This internal anxiety, it just builds and builds until it reaches this fever pitch in a terrifying dream she has. She's lying next to the empty bunk of Kate Tumpert. And all the fear she's trying to control, it just coalesces. But it's projected onto Don Gately, who is one of the most stable and, tough figures in the house.
And the dream's setup is this perfect psychological paradox. You have Gately, a man known for his, intimidating physical presence, his Mid-South accent, and he is totally transformed.
He becomes Dr. Don.
Dr. Don, bibbed in sterile dental white, humming softly. His hands are described as warm and clean and deft.
So he's transformed into this detached professional caregiver.
Which is exactly what Joel desperately craves.
Yeah.
She wants help that is singular, focused only on her problem, and crucially, help that lacks any emotional entanglement or judgment. He's abstractly kind.
But that serenity, it's just a setup. It's immediately shattered by the central focal point of the dream.
The reflection.
The reflection in the tiny stainless steel mirror that's attached to Gately's head. It's like a third eye that sees past all the pretense.
And that mirror, it is the unfiltered, non-negotiable truth of sobriety. It doesn't lie.
So what does she see first?
First, it reflects her own face, but it's convexly distorted and ravaged. It's the objective, physical truth of her decline.
The bug eyes and sunken cheeks.
The lamp-black smudges from years of chaos. It forces her to face the very consequences she's trying to scrub away with her expensive revitalizers. It confirms her deepest fear of physical decay.
And here's where it gets, really interesting. The reflection shifts. It shifts from her own self-image to the image of her caregiver. The mirror reveals the truth that's hiding beneath the Dr. Don mask.
Exactly. The dentist's good face is suddenly blotted out, and it's replaced by his countless, sharp, tapered, red-tinged canine teeth.
Canine teeth that carelessly tears at meat.
And these teeth, they lead back and away down a pitch-black pipe. The crucial insight here is that Joel's fear isn't of Gately the person.
It's a fear of what he represents in that moment.
It's the hidden primal violence, the raw, untamed force that is required to survive, and perhaps the force required even to achieve sobriety.
The red tinge on the teeth. That suggests Gately's own past violence, right? His own hidden history she knows almost nothing about.
Absolutely. She projects her fear onto him, and in that instant, she is seized not by a fear of the reflection, but a self-seized fear of her teeth, a terror.
So the terror is internalized. It's not about him anymore. It's about her.
Yes. It's the subconscious realization that recovery might require her to confront her own destructive, untamed self, the violence she's perpetrated on her own body and her own mind.
The rows of sharp canines, they blot out the good face.
Which suggests that the necessary force you need for survival often obscures compassion. The dream is forcing her to acknowledge the darker, unvarnished reality of the struggle she's in.
And yet, the dream ends on this note of desperate, fragile hope.
It does.
Despite the physical decay, the horrifying canine vision, the probing Gately, this dream Gately, he assures her.
These can be saved.
These can be saved.
And that phrase, that is the entire conflict of her recovery right there. It's the ultimate precarious promise.
The damage is real. It's visible. It's terrifying.
But the fight to save what remains, both the physical body and the self, is still worthwhile. The dream confirms the depth of the self-inflicted damage while at the same time offering the only possible path forward.
Which is the arduous process of rebuilding, piece by piece. And the immediate physical consequence of that terror is action. She snaps awake, and instead of just dwelling on the psychic horror, she starts cleaning the filthy room.
With whatever she can find, she's using stale water and a bumper sticker to sweep grit off the floor.
This compulsive cleaning, it becomes her meditation. It's a physical substitute for the internal discipline that she currently lacks in her early recovery.
And it's a discipline she learned years ago. It's rooted directly in her past trauma with the Incandenza family.
Right. This compulsion started with Orrin Incandenza, the football player brother.
As a practice of creative visualization, the idea was to visualize a dazzlingly clean space, and by doing so, you were essentially erecting fortifications for a life alone.
It was an attempt to create sterile order, to create independence from this highly secretive and troubled family unit she was getting tangled up with.
Exactly.
So let's ground this for you, the listener, because the Incandenza family is the source of so much of the pathology we're seeing. We're talking about the legacy of Jim Incandenza.
The auteur, known variously as himself or the Mad Stork.
So who was he? Through the eyes of his children and through Joel's eyes.
Well, Orrin's perspective, which the sources characterize as the arrested child view, saw his father as utterly remote.
He gave an expressionless stare from a great height.
Right, and Orrin believed his father's internal life was just a black hole. Orrin even thought Jim wore the mask, a kind of deliberate social mask appearing autistic or catatonic.
And communicating only through his mother, Avril.
Yes. This just shows Orrin's profound failure to ever connect with his father. It traps him in this resentful, stunted perception of the man.
But Joelle, she's the outsider. She was Orrin's romantic partner, and she developed a much more critical, a much more piercing counter-analysis. She knew immediately never to trust a man's view of his own parents.
And she had direct access to his work. She watched his films, The Work, firsthand.
Her assessment.
Her assessment was that they were technically gorgeous, but oddly hollow, empty. She completely stripped away the artistic mystique.
And she diagnosed Jim Incandenza as an optician and technician who was an amateur at any kind of real communication.
That's it. His mastery was technical, optical, mechanical, but he was fundamentally incapable of emotional connection.
But wait, if he was so emotionally hollow, how do we reconcile that with these small, rare human flashes she noticed in his work?
This is where Joelle cracks the code of his pain.
Yeah.
She specifically noticed 3 quick cuts in one of his films, The Medusa v. the Odalisque.
And what do they show?
They showed the combatants' faces twisted with torment, but these cuts were almost subliminally quick, which suggests the director couldn't help but put in a genuine moment of humanity, a flash of his own pain,
But he wanted it unstudyable.
Exactly, unstudyable. Why go to that technical extreme to hide a flash of pain?
Because he was a technician who treated emotion like a flaw in the design.
Right. The sources indicate he was technologically sophisticated enough to actually up the film speed in just those few specific frames. He was actively thwarting anyone trying to pause or study the expression.
He was trying to eliminate the evidence of his own humanity.
Because he felt it compromised him somehow. The cost of his technical brilliance, his cold irony, was the suppression of his authentic pain, which he only allowed to leak into his art in moments that were too fleeting to be registered consciously.
So the core family's sadness, as Joelle saw it, wasn't just Jim's technical coldness. It was a deep structural dysfunction.
Absolutely. The family unit was lousy with secrets. The Incandenza's overt eccentricity, all the strange manic energy was, in Joel's view, just a pretense.
An elaborate cover story.
An elaborate cover story that prevented any genuine openness or connection between the family members. Their weirdness was a defense mechanism against real emotion.
And this brings us to the ultimate source of that dysfunction, the mother figure. Avril Incandenza, the moms. Joelle's interaction with the family, specifically at that Thanksgiving dinner, was so traumatic that it became this hinge point. It drove her back toward addiction and initiated her compulsive need for psychological fortifications.
And the setting of the dinner itself was immediately tense. It was controlling.
Like we said, no turkey. Just an in-joke that Joelle wasn't privy to, which is designed to exclude.
And the dinner didn't start until 2300 hours, 11 o'clock at night. It creates this atmosphere of deliberate, cultivated eccentricity.
And you have Jim Incandenza drinking from a shimmering tumbler.
While Avril's fluted champagne glass, the level in it never seemed to drop, which suggests this quiet, immense consumption, all masked by formality.
And Joelle observes Avril's specific, unsettling control mechanism. On the surface, she was gracious and warm and attentive without obtruding.
She was working overtime to facilitate communication, which Jim desperately needed, since he couldn't speak to his 2 undamaged sons without her mediation.
And yet Joelle felt this immediate, terrible intuition.
An indefensible feeling that Avril wished her ill. And it was so potent, it gave her those howling fantods again.
It was pure psychic violence disguised as hospitality.
The power dynamic at that table was undeniable. Joelle observes that the entire table, including herself, inclined very subtly toward Avril, very slightly and subtly, like heliotropes.
Like flowers turning to the sun.
Yes. Despite Jim's physical height and his status as the auteur, Avril was the undisputed emotional and gravitational center. She was manipulating the entire conversation.
Sounds like a psychological pressure cooker.
It was. The dinner ended in what's described as an explosion of goodwill. But Joel's internal sense was so overwhelmed that she felt certain Avril could have sat there and cut out Joel's pancreas and eaten them chilled.
Wow.
And no one at the table would have noticed or remarked upon it, given how completely they were all inclined toward her control. The politeness was a terrifying cover for this potential hidden lethality.
And that deep intuition, that psychic stress from the family's dysfunction, it was the sole trigger for a catastrophic decision.
Yes. That evening, Joel immediately did lines of cocaine to keep from sleeping the moment they got back to the co-op.
And this was an unprecedented act. It was driven only by the psychic trauma of that family.
Which proves the necessity of her eventual compulsive cleaning, the fortifications. And this, in turn, led directly to Orn's subsequent horrifying night terror. The internal chaos of the Incandenza family didn't just affect them. It literally drove an outsider back into the arms of addiction.
So this internal psychological breakdown is not just a personal story.
Not at all.
It is the source material for the global conflict. The family Joel is running from is the one the AFR is hunting.
Precisely. The deep, destructive internal chaos of Joel's past is now set to collide violently with the external geopolitical operation that targets the auteur, Jim Incandenza, and his inner circle.
Okay, so that's the internal landscape, this incredible pressure cooker. Let's pivot now to the external abyss, the operation run by Fortier and the AFR.
A completely different kind of pressure.
Right. And to reiterate, the AFR are les assassins des fauteuils roulants, militant separatists whose lethal mission is to secure the device that will lead to the destabilization and self-destruction of ONAN.
And they just had a recent operational success. They located and secured a third read-only cartridge of the lethal media known only as the Entertainment.
This was burglarized from the death of a man named Duplessis, which confirmed the device's circulation.
But the verification of this cartridge came at a horrific cost, and the source describes it with this sort of clinical resignation, regretful losses.
Let's chronicle those deaths, young Desjardins and the older and valued Joubert.
The tragic details here are what really quantify the threat. Desjardins was the idealist of the group, complaining earlier about the wasted time of less lethal cartridges.
And Joubert?
Joubert was the red-bearded workhorse, a diabetic. He rolled in to check on Desjardins. And both men were found, but they were totally entranced. They were made comfortable in the locked room, and they were allowed to view the Entertainment again and again until they died.
And the mechanism of death here is so crucial.
It is. They declined food, they declined water, and critically Joubert's life-saving insulin. They chose ecstatic viewing over self-preservation.
Their only sounds were described as cries of impatience at the player's rewinder.
So this isn't just entertainment. It's a fatal, insatiable power that compels self-neglect unto death.
And Fortier's reaction, he's the leader of this ruthless cell.
Yeah.
It's chillingly matter-of-fact.
Yes. The source says he sadly said, boff, and acceptingly shrugged. The cost was known up front. The sacrifice was deemed heroic, necessary to confirm beyond a shadow of a doubt the lethal allure and efficacy of this device.
So the AFR now has absolute, confirmed proof that this device exists and possesses the power to compel fatal self-destruction on a mass scale.
Which is the exact tool they need for ONAN's internal collapse.
But the discovered cartridge came with one major technical setback. It was read-only, RO. Meaning high-speed duplication was impossible. The ability to mass-produce and disseminate this weapon across ONAN was off the table with this copy.
So Fortier, who's always the philosophical strategist, he immediately shifted the mission.
The objective changes.
Completely. They now know the device exists, so the new task is far more arduous. Secure the original master copy.
Which belonged to the auteur Jim Incandenza. That's the duplicable version. And this shift immediately transforms the operation from an object hunt
into a person hunt. Exactly. Fortier's new mandate is to identify, locate, and take for technical interview.
A euphemism.
A very thin euphemism, the sources quickly clarify, is a reference to torture all known persons associated with the auteur and the performer. The AFR is shifting from intelligence gathering to targeted abduction.
So where did they focus their surveillance?
Fortier centralized AFR personnel at a commandeered anti-toy shop. The focus became extremely tight on the deceased auteur's colleagues and relations.
Primarily because they're concentrated at the ETA, the Enfield Tennis Academy.
Right. They already have key staff recruited, plus a Canadian instructor and a student already inside.
So they have assets in place.
Assets in place. And outside, Mademoiselle Luria P. is gathering confidences in the desert. And an expensive source at MIT reported the performer's last known employment was a small Cambridge radio station.
So the pressure is mounting directly on the Incandenza network, which now includes Joel, the veiled performer.
The AFR is not just watching, they are actively acquiring human intelligence.
They are. And this leads directly to maybe the most terrifying piece of source material in this entire deep dive.
The field test.
The field test, designed to confirm the entertainment's power.
This whole phase is about statistical assurance. It's about transforming psychological terror into quantifiable data.
On the day of Fortier's return, the performer's technical engineer from that radio station was acquired in what the source calls a public but low-risk operation.
And the ease of acquisition is itself alarming. This engineer, he divulged all he professed to know under the mere descriptive threat of technical interview procedures.
So they just had to tell him what they were going to do.
That's all it took. He didn't even need to be touched before he gave up his limited information. However, the AFR needed proof the information was complete.
And they needed to confirm the destructive power of the entertainment.
So even after Maratha, the cell's best judge of Americans' veracity, confirmed the engineer's limited statements, the formal technical interview proceeded anyway.
Why the redundant violence?
Because the operation isn't about collecting facts anymore. It's about confirming the scale of the weapon. The engineer showed consistency 2 levels past average USA endurance, meaning he withstood the threat and mild pressure far longer than they expected. But the real horror comes from M. Brulim,
The expert who combines technical expertise with a skepticism de coeur.
a deep professional doubt that requires empirical proof.
And Brulim developed what the sources call the NT calculus. You have to explain that calculus because this is where cold geopolitical logic becomes utterly monstrous.
The NT calculus is a terrifying field test. It's designed to measure the entertainment's motivational range.
Right.
The AFR needs statistical assurance that this film is lethal, not just to a couple of addicts, but on a macro-political scale. It has to defy all known rational choice theory. If the goal is ONAN self-destruction, they need to know that citizens, en masse, would choose the film over survival.
So how did Brulim test this mathematically?
The setup is chillingly simple and specific. The subject's head is immobilized. He views the cartridge twice for free.
That establishes the initial allure.
Right. Then Brulim rolls in, blindfolded. A gesture that, maybe protects his own sanity or preserves the subject's anonymity. And he's holding a small orthopedic saw.
And the price.
The subject is informed that each subsequent viewing will cost 1 digit from the subject's extremities. And then Brulim hands the orthopedic saw to the subject.
He makes the subject perform their own mutilation.
Yes. The subject performs the act willingly. They make the choice, and in doing so, they confirm the irresistible nature of the lure.
Wow.
Brulim's goal is to compute a statistical matrix between n, the number of replays requested, and t, the time taken to decide and remove the digit.
For the cartridge's allure to be lethal on the geopolitical scale, the desire has to be incapable of satiation.
The political necessity is confirmed if, and this is a direct quote, the 9th digit of extremities had to come off as quickly and willingly as the 2nd.
The implication is that the motivation must be totally overriding. A desire so powerful, it completely eclipses the most basic human instinct for self-preservation, for physical wholeness. Brulim is seeking statistical proof that the film is worth more than the body.
It's the ultimate, detached, rigorous verification of maximum desire. And the sources confirm that as Fortier rides the bus, imagining the sybaritic entrancement of an entire city,
2/3 of the population lying inert, hedonistically fouling their own spaces.
he knows the AFR is already acquiring more subjects for Brulim. They are targeting people passively undefended enough to be acquired publicly with quiet from the surrounding streets.
The threat is now quantified. The hunt is fully escalated.
And the scale of that threat is quantified, and the target is clear. Jimin condenses inner circle, which includes the veiled performer, Joel.
So this is where the intense external mission slams directly into the internal world of the recovery house.
Yes, Marathe, one of Fortier's key operatives, is the man on the ground. He's making the rounds of substance difficulty rehabilitation facilities, the demi-maisons, seeking the performer.
And Marathe, maintaining this perfect cover, arrives at Ennet House. He's veiled in a blanket-lapped wheelchair.
A classic AFR tactic. It signals vulnerability, makes him appear to belong.
But he is suffering physically. The place is just chaos, an anthill which had been stirred with a stick. It's loud, hot, and it reeks intensely of smoke and stale cigarettes.
And the scenes he witnesses upon arrival, they just confirm the sheer strangeness of the environment, which, ironically, helps his cover.
The source material is full of this intense human detritus. You've got martial arts mimes.
A man without hands and feet struggling on the stairs, a girl who appears to just remove her eye.
And this constant unnerving whisper from the residents, pet the dogs.
Marathi's one of the few people not smoking, and he's actively fighting physical nausea from the smoky air, but he maintains his performance of desperation.
He has his prepared cover story ready. I am addicted and deformed, seeking residential treatment for addiction desperately.
And critically, the fact that he wears the cheesecloth veil of the UHID, the Unspecified Handicapped Incarcerated Despondents Performers Organization, it raises no eyebrows.
Because the pervasive strangeness of Enid House is his best ally. His veil, which would draw attention anywhere else, it just fits into the existing climate of chaos and affliction.
He's performing desperation, but his physical suffering from the environment is real, which gives this disturbing authenticity to his ruse.
While he's waiting, Marathi is confronted by this man of vacant intensity, later identified as Selwyn. And Marathi immediately detects something deeper than just addiction. Selwyn smells distinctly of livestock on a hot day.
And he recognizes the specific chemical signature, trans-3-methyl-2-hexanoic acid. This is the goatish odor the sources identify as a distinct chemical in the sweat of grave mental illness.
So Marathi is a field operative prepared for spies, deception, torture. But Selwyn is a challenge of a completely different order.
It's a moment of sad, unexpected humanity colliding with his dark mission.
Selwyn kneels before Marathi, and he whispers his deeply paranoid theory.
That most people in the room ain't real. They are metal people covered in a micro-thin layer of skin, and their fatal flaw, only detectable by the real ones, is a faint whir from their internal processor's gears.
And this is a crucial moment for Marathi. His internal dialogue reveals his operational calm.
He is prepared to die violently at any time, which paradoxically grants him the freedom to choose his emotional response, so he engages calmly. He allows Selwyn to press so close that the man's nose touches the veil, testing for the whir.
And he responds with his cover, this quiet, culturally appropriate dismissal.
The Swiss, we are a quiet people, and reserved. In addition, I am deformed.
And Selwyn retreats. He confirms nothing. Not a sound, I knew. Not a sound.
The exchange just establishes Marathi's mastery of psychological deception, even against true mental illness. But Selwyn's final words, they carry this unintended, profound commentary on the place itself.
The real world's one room. These so-called people, they're everybody you know. There's only 26 total. They play different characters.
In a sense, Selwyn, in his delusion, recognizes the artificial projected nature of the recovery environment where everyone is forced to perform a role.
Marathi finally makes his way to the office and immediately realizes his rare misjudgment of authority figures. The clipboarded woman in charge, she's not another applicant. She is the central figure.
And she establishes her credibility almost immediately, noting that she came in a chair, too.
While she's rummaging in this old black metal cabinet over her desk, Marathi, the consummate spy, he's committing the office details to memory.
The specific Indonesian teleputer, the poor knob lock, the lack of microwave, alarming all potential weaknesses for later exploitation.
And then he sees it. In twin stacks, near the front of the open cabinet, he sees many cartridges of TP Entertainment. Specifically, plain brown plastic cases with the faint embossed round faces and smiles.
The unmistakable sign of the entertainment.
At that exact moment, the authority figure casually delivers the final, critical piece of intelligence. Without realizing Marathi is the AFR agent hunting her, she mentions that Enid House has a UHID member in early residency right now who wears the defacing veil.
The performer.
The performer. Marathi now has both critical targets, the veiled performer, and potential copies of the lethal film confirmed in the same location.
And the authority figure then offers him a cot for the night on the converter sofa, completely believing his desperate story.
This forces Marathi into an immediate existential decision, what the sources refer to as his grand calculus.
This is the critical fork in the road for him. He faces 3 immediate options, and his entire life, his wife's life, it all hangs on this choice.
So option 1, absolute AFR loyalty.
Accept the cot, observe the girl and the cartridges, and alert Fortier. This means continuing the mission, knowing Fortier's implacable wrath for any perceived hesitancy or failure.
Option 2, ONAN defection.
And this is driven by his profound internal conflict. He exits immediately, finds a private telephone, and calls steeply of the USBSS, the U.S. Bureau of Secret Services, with the confirmed location.
And why this sudden betrayal?
He'd be casting his lot with ONAN to secure high-income medical care for his beloved wife, Gertrude, who suffers from restenotic issues.
Restenotic. What does that imply about her medical needs?
Restenotic refers to the re-narrowing or obstruction of a blood vessel that has previously been treated, usually with a stent or angioplasty. It means her treatment is failing. She requires complex, continuous, and extremely expensive specialized medical care that the AFR simply cannot provide.
So he's driven by love.
Yes. He's realizing he has lost the belly for this type of work, the gruesome technical interviews, and he longs for the safety and the reward that ONAN could offer.
And the third option, which he immediately rejects.
Violence. Snap the woman's neck and call an elite detail. A fast, brutal option he rejects due to the surrounding witnesses, bodies unexpectedly leaning into the office doorway. It makes a clean assassination impossible.
So his choice is between mission loyalty and personal safety and love.
He's calculating the variable of how long to remain working for dissemination against when to jump to the safety of American welcome, where he knows he'd be rewarded for his knowledge of Quebecois insurgency.
And the situation is confirmed, beyond any doubt, removing any question about the contents of that cabinet.
Yes, the final operational confirmation comes from Johnette, the young staff member who enters to clock in. The authority figure orders her to check the Donnie cartridges brought down from the ETA.
Enfield Tennis Academy.
For appropriateness after lights out. The cartridges are right there in the cabinet, and their provenance is confirmed. They came from the Incandenza network.
So Marathi now possesses intelligence that places everyone in Enid House, Joel, Gately, the staff, the patients, directly in the crosshairs of both the AFR and ONAN.
The private place of recovery is now ground zero.
So what does this all mean? We've seen the relentless internal chaos of Joel's past, rooted in those Incandenza family secrets, manifested in her obsessive fear of physical decay.
And it has just collided head-on with the external, quantified chaos of the geopolitical hunt for the ultimate weapon.
Marathi, this calculating operative who is driven by desperate love for his restenotic wife, he has located both the prize, the potential copies of the entertainment, and the target, the veiled performer.
In his existential decision point betray the AFR mission of disseminating terror, or defect to ONAN for his wife's life, is now immediate and urgent.
The deep-seated, hidden dysfunction of the Incandenza family has literally created the geopolitical threat that now hovers over the very place built for healing. The sources have meticulously chronicled the incredible lethal power attributed to this entertainment cartridge. A power so great it commands self-mutilation, causes death by ecstatic viewing.
It is a piece of art that somehow managed to short-circuit the fundamental human wiring for survival.
So if the lure of this film can destroy lives and nations by simply offering total fatal entrancement, then the question for us, for you, is about the creation itself.
What level of artistic or addictive perfection must its master copy possess? What physical and emotional sacrifices did the auteur, Jim Incandenza?
The brilliant optician who was an amateur at communication, the man who couldn't help but put painful, unstudyable human flashes into his work.
What sacrifices did he make to achieve the ultimate fatal piece of entertainment? That question implies that the true destructive cost of the entertainment might lie not just in its viewing, but in the ultimate price paid by the artist to bring that perfect lethal object into the world.
And that's the terrifying thought that's now hanging over Joel's fragile attempt at recovery.